Hi, welcome to the My Career Podcast by Pathway CTM. I'm Izzy and I'm your host for today. And I'm joined by Kishan, who is a finance apprentice at Sky. And today we'll be hearing why an apprenticeship wasn't always his plan and why he changed his mind during his gap year. So listen to find out more about that. Did you want to introduce yourself, Kishan?
Yep. Hi, everyone. To everyone listening / watching, I'm Kishan, a finance apprentice at Sky. Started at September 20, and on the 4-year scheme.
Cool. So we're going to talk a bit today about your apprenticeship journey, why you chose an apprenticeship, applications, your parents, teachers' reaction, etc. So what kind of was the turning point for you in year 13 when you thought, actually, I don't know if I'm going to go to university, think I'm going to do an apprenticeship? And I know you kind of said earlier that maybe you did a gap year. So tell us a bit more through that.
Yeah, sure. So I think at the start of year 13, I was actually... my heart was set on university. I think we were talking earlier that, ironically, I was the first one to send my personal statement off. So I was really getting into it, what societies I wanted to do, and getting excited for the university experience. But come results day, I find out that obviously my cousin, who we go through this experience together in terms of exams, she's actually about to start an apprenticeship at Google doing digital marketing. And it made me have a think of results day about why I'm actually going to university and what is this. I kind of think about it logically, the underlying reason for it. And from then on, I just had conversations with teachers, my parents, my cousin obviously, and her family, and decided to take a gap year because obviously at that point it was a bit too late to apply for apprenticeships that year. And I thought, give it a go, defer my option for a year because I got my place at uni, didn't work out, start an apprenticeship. If my apprenticeships didn't work out, I'll go to university. So I took a gap year, applied to about 10 to 15 apprenticeships, and obviously where I landed, it worked out in the end. But I think in terms of the turning point, I'd have to say results day. That's when it really changed for me.
Cool. So you say you applied for about 10 to 15. Were they all finance-based? What kinds of companies were you applying to? Were they all really large organisations? Where were you looking for those kind of roles?
I think when I was looking for finance apprenticeships, I was just looking for anything related to finance in general. It doesn't matter the qualification, the length of location. I think the reason for that is obviously taking advice from my parents, my dad, saying that get the interview practice because that's going to help you when the company that you really want comes around. And when I was applying to those 10 to 15, I was obviously looking at the big fours, companies outside, local ones such as RSM, which was actually quite near me. So I was looking for various different range of companies, big and small, different kind of sectors as well. So when obviously I was applying to those companies, obviously got a lot of interview practice, and yes, maybe I wasn't interested in them, but that wasn't the point. The point was you're getting the practice in.
Yeah.
And thankfully Sky was one of the last ones in that process. So by the time I got to their application steps, which were similar to the other companies, I was well prepared for it. So It worked out in the end.
So what happened with your university placements? Were you meant to be going to do finance at uni? Did you kind of defer that?
So I was meant to do economics at Loughborough. That was that was my goal, and that my heart was set on it throughout year 13. So obviously when results day came around, I had the offer, but then again, I thought to myself, I can always go back the next year. I can always go the next year. So I deferred my option, and it was nice to have the support of my parents for that because they obviously trust me because they know I'm hardworking. They trust me to carry out my exams. So they believe that I'm going to make the right decision, and they were with me throughout that process. And obviously it worked out in the end. But if the apprenticeship didn't work out, I still would have had a viable career ahead of me because doing economics at university like Loughborough, University of East Anglia, which is one of my other options, is still a great path.
Yeah, so when you got that offer from Sky and you signed the contract and then you had University of Loughborough or Sky, what made you make that final decision? Was there any kind of influence that you'd had? Had you been to anything that maybe made you make that decision a bit easier? What was the turning point?
Oh, I cancelled that student application straight away, the loan application. As soon as the offer came in, the next day I was on the phone with the finance company saying I want to make sure I don't get this loan because I'm not going to university anymore, and I'm not going to university at all. And it was a no-brainer, to be honest, because once I saw what apprenticeships were like, going to the Sky Apprentice Insight Day as well as the Finance Insight Day in January, my heart was set on doing an apprenticeship, whether it was at Sky or any other company. My heart was set on doing it. So it was a no-brainer. As soon as the offer came in, I was I'm out. Basically, I'm out towards Sky.
And I think it's a really brave decision, and with obviously you say your parents knew that you weren't a silly kind of person. You knew what you were doing. But when you actually said to them, look, I'm not going to go to University of Loughborough, you know, it's a great university. What was their reaction to that?
I think at the end of the day, they were really supportive. So they accepted my decision. They when I explained them the benefits of the apprenticeship, and obviously they saw my cousin doing one, they understood that it is a viable option.
Yeah.
I think what what kind of ruffled my feathers a little bit is that when the results for Sky came around, when I got the offer, yes, it was all kind of like happy days and all that type of stuff. But they still got a few. They got a couple, questions from other parents in the family saying,
Yeah.
"Oh, is your child doing the right decision?" and stuff like that. "Oh, my child's going to this uni." It's very like basically prideful stuff in that sense.
Yeah.
So when that happened, I was saying to them, right, they don't know what the apprenticeship route is like. They obviously haven't been informed enough about it. And now a couple of years later, they're asking me about how's they're saying to my parents, "Oh, your child's doing so well now." And then funny how it turns around so quickly. So
It does.
yeah. So my parents were really supportive. Obviously, they heard some they were talking to other parents in the family saying, "Oh, was this the right decision?" But they stuck with me and. Yeah, I have to say that there was support throughout the process.
Yeah, that's so good. And like you said, how the tables have turned, and now you're giving them and their children advice about the program, because I'm sure when you started it, there was a lot of uncertainty, and COVID was kind of at its peak, and there was a lot, our apprentice is going to be the first people to go, things like that. So that's really positive that you've kind of turned that around. And I know you mentioned there about the Sky Insight events that you went to. Just talk to us a bit more about them and maybe how they impacted your decision.
Yeah, sure. So the first one I did was, I believe, around October 19, and that was just an insight event into Sky, apprenticeships at Sky, like what they were like, Sky as a company. And I obviously I really enjoyed that day, and it's the first time going to the office, and it was the first time actually going to like an in-person event. So that really like kind of got me going on apprenticeships, and it really really kind of interested me in Sky. And when I was just, as I was saying before, the application process, well, they said they were opening it soon, so I was kind of thinking ahead of time, I want to prepare as best as I can, because this was like the one out of all the apprenticeships I was looking for. So I was preparing all these questions, and when I got to the Insight event, I found that the applications were opening like December time. So I was like, okay, fair enough. I prepared it. It's not a big deal.
Yeah.
I decided to print it out and show it to the apprentice lead on day, just to get thoughts on it, because it doesn't hurt to actually get the opinion of someone who's going to be potentially handling your application process. And she gave me some pointers, and she was obviously she was happy that I brought this. And when it came to the apprentice Insight event in January, I was just obviously with a couple of people there, and she recognized me, and obviously we got to chatting and stuff, just saying, "How are you?" And I was just asking questions about when the application process will be fully finished, because I was actually planning to go to Sri Lanka in May 20 that year. So I was kind of just asking questions because I want to make sure I'm here for it. And I think to take away from that, it's some if you kind of put yourself out there, get prepared ahead of time, it's going to benefit you. And the fact that she remembered me would help me, because at the end of the day, sometimes it's you got to be networking with the right people. And fun enough, we had some team building activities that day, and obviously I was leading our group with the answers, and one of the people who were kind of asking us questions on it, he actually interviewed me on the day I had on the interview day. So we actually had a decent conversation for 5 minutes before we got to the actual interview, and it was nice because it just goes to show I put myself out there, and the rewards have reaped in that sense. When he had seen me on the actual interview day, it was obviously a nice surprise, and it helps. Helps any little helps pretty much.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you, and it's the networking side of it, and the fact that you went there and you put yourself out there when you were looking for these apprenticeships is kind of what we always tell our student network to do as well. We work with a lot of employers that do events like that, and we're always encouraging them, because it also, if you've applied for, so say you applied for 10 to 15, I applied for near on 40 apprenticeships, you can also rule out the companies that maybe you don't feel suited to you, and you go to the office, and if you don't gel with the people, and maybe you don't get the vibe that you originally wanted, that also makes it easier for you when you're going to the interviews and making your decisions. So yeah, that's great. And the fact that he would then interviewed you is brilliant for you, because you've shown, you've been there twice, you really, really want this, and you've got that enthusiasm. So that's great. So I also wanted to kind of touch on, obviously you're doing a finance apprenticeship. You've gone on from a level 4 to a level 7. So kind of for listeners and viewers, and can you just break that down? So the level 4, what did that mean? What did you do? And now you've gone on to the level 7, what are you doing is kind of the difference, and what qualification have you got out of that?
Yeah, sure. So when you're looking at finance apprenticeships, there are many qualifications that you can take depending what type of company you're working in. If you're going to be working kind of like the big 4, typically you're going to be doing an ACA qualification, ACCA. They're the typical qualifications that go along with those apprenticeships
Okay.
at the big 4. But with Sky, as you're working like a commercial-based company, you're more likely to do SEMA. And the way that this apprenticeship is structured, you do 4 years. Level 4 is 18 months. You do your foundation exams, kind of get you to basic fundamentals of accounting, finance, and business in general. So you kind of do the 4 foundation exams plus a case study. Once you've passed that, then you move on to level 7, which is essentially what the graduates do in finance for SEMA. They do these 3 levels: operational, management, strategic, and that's what your level 7 is basically. There's obviously going to be coursework on top of that. You have obviously a tuition provider, as with all apprenticeships, they'll be helping you out. You'll have like progress review calls, and you'll be given coursework to test you on various skills and behaviors. But in essence, that's what I was doing as part of my that's what I am doing as part of my level 7 apprenticeship.
Cool. And how do you find the studying side of it? It's quite a big thing that a lot of parents ask us, and also students, the work-life balance. I don't really understand it. When you're at university, you're completely committed to doing that degree full-time, whereas when you do an apprenticeship, it's half work, half university. How do you find that kind of work-life balance in studying?
I think it was definitely an adjustment at the start, because I kind of thought of it as it's similar to college, right? You kind of start at 9 o'clock, you finish at 3, whereas now it's like 9 to 5:30. Obviously, you still have to adjust your lifestyle. So it was an adjustment at the start. When it came to my first few exams, I made a couple of mistakes here and there, but it's a learning process. You take stock of what happened, you obviously evaluate what's happened, and you just kind of make improvements based on that, and you go forward. So when it came to those first few exams, I made those mistakes. I just kind of went on from there, and I got used to it. The work-life balance is definitely possible. You just got to make sure you're planning out your time. You're knowing, like, you don't just go into your room and study for 3-4 hours straight. Have a plan in place, and talk to your line manager about days you need to do some intense studying before an exam. Obviously, companies will offer generous study leave to go with your apprenticeship. And also as part of your apprenticeship, you're doing off-the-job training, so you have time off to do coursework as well. So you don't feel like you have to do that outside of work.
Yeah.
But the work-life balance is definitely possible. You just got to make sure you're planning your time, and you're taking regular breaks, all the usual stuff. So it's the same principles I applied when I was in A levels and GCSEs. Just now you're working.
And how did you find that transition from school into the workplace? Because it's a massive thing, I think. When you're at school, you're 18, you're kind of top of the pyramid, as it were. Like you're the oldest in the whole school. Then you go into employment, and you're the youngest by quite far, and maybe the only apprentice in the team. That's
Definitely.
the position that I was in. So how did you find that transition?
Yeah, I think it was quite interesting when I had certain expectations of what it was going to be like, how they're going to treat me, because obviously, 18 years old, I'm surrounded by people who are far in their professional career, and it's about whether you're going to be treated like an equal. And I can safe to say it's been a great experience on that, because you are definitely treated like an equal. As what in my experience you have been, and other apprentices I've talked to at Sky, you're treated like a colleague. You'll be given the help where you need it, but you'll also be given the responsibility as well at the same time, because they trust you to carry out your work, and they treat you like any other person, really. So they won't condescend you or anything like that. You'll be an equal to them. You'll be given the level of responsibility that they think you'll be able to handle, and if you want to push yourself, they're going to support you every step of the way. So I had some expectations, but obviously they weren't met in a good way. And I guess safe to say I've had great support from everyone so far.
There's just so much opportunity, isn't there, to get involved in. If you say to your line manager, I want to get involved in this project, or you work with the early careers team to go out to events and things and promote the programs, there's so much opportunity available, I think, for an apprentice to get involved in and grow in a specific area, whether it's kind of outside of your normal job role. And I think that's really important to kind of share the messaging, and you're not just going to make the cups of teas and do the photocopy, and that's not a thing anymore. No. You're kind of working towards a real qualification. So I completely agree with that. And I just kind of wanted to follow on from kind of that work in school into work life. Did you find that you needed any specific grades for your apprenticeship? Did you need any specific subjects? What subjects did you study at A level?
So I studied geography, economics, and psychology.
Okay.
There are no for Sky apprenticeships in finance. There are no minimum. There are no certain requirements for certain subjects or like grades wise. I believe it's a minimum of 5 A star to C at GCSE, which is standard at most apprenticeships, and A to C at GCSE at A level. So they're minimum requirements, and there's no kind of specific subject you have to study. Some finance apprenticeships do require you to have maths at A level or a certain grade at GCSEs, but that's what I've seen. I think Unilever was actually one of them, might have been, but that's Sky
Yeah.
at the moment.
Yeah, and it would always say on the application
Exactly.
kind of process as well, on what the requirements are and what you need for those. And kind of going on to the application process, what was your process like at Sky? Was it virtual? Was it in person?
Yeah, so the the application process was entirely virtual. It starts off with standard application questions, which is just getting your personal details down, etc. The subjects you did at school. Then it follows on to what's called job simulation, which is basically testing how would you respond in a workplace. Again, they're fairly standard questions. It's just testing. It wants to see how you react, and it provides you like kind of feedback based on it. And then you move on to the next stage, which is depending which apprenticeship program you're doing. Like for example, if you're doing software engineering, you'd have to do some sort of coding test, which they will provide loads of information about beforehand, and you can prepare for it in whatever way you need to. But mine was just a numerical reasoning test, so I prepared for that just looking at online assessments, what they're typically like, numerical reasoning ones. And because I'd done a few before at like through the other application programs such as Deloitte, I had a bit of practice in them, so it wasn't too daunting. And then when I passed that, I think it was March 20, I did the video, like it was a pre-recorded video questions. I think it's called like the video assessment, and they're basically a set of questions that you have to record your answers in front of a camera of. And that's where I think most students tend to trip up. Most applicants, they've been saying to us, because it's obviously quite nerve-wracking to sit in front of a camera.
It's not natural, is it?
No,
at all?
definitely not. And I had the good thing is, because I applied to so many apprenticeships, which is what we both recommend to people, is that you get that practice, because a lot of them require those video assessments.
Yeah.
And when I got to Sky, which is one of the last ones, I was actually quite confident in front of the camera, and it just felt quite natural. And then after that, it was the final interview day. And I remember getting my offer for the interview a week before, and funny enough, it came through my spam, so I'm actually glad I looked through that on that week before.
That's a good point. A lot of them go into spam.
Yeah, it's quite trivial, but you really do need to check that, because for some reason it does. I'm not sure why it happened, but I'm glad I looked anyway. And and it was a week to prepare. It was actually competency-based questions. It was going to be an analytical question they give you to answer, and a task to do off camera. So I literally spent 3-4 hours every day, up until the interview, with my sister, practicing questions, researching Sky as a company, going on their company website, not the product website, and just any article, I just clicked on it. I copied onto a Word document and just made a note of it, and even read through their financial statements. Not that I understood it.
That's preparation.
Exactly, but the thing is, I didn't understand any of it. And the funny thing is, I mentioned one little fact from there, and even the interviewer was like, "What does that even mean?" And I was like, I don't even know what it means, but I'm just showing you that I am prepared for it. I mean, that's the lengths that I went to, and at that point, I was like, I know I prepared so much for it. And yeah, that was a final interview day. It was a mix of competency-based questions, like 45 minutes and a break.
Yeah.
And then I had to do a SWOT analysis off camera, which is like strength, weakness, opportunity, and threat of Sky. And one, like, they asked me an analytical question where it would be, if this Sky program came out, based on your knowledge of Sky, how many people would watch it? And they just want to see how you answer it. So a typical interview could look like that if you go to another company doing finance, but it could be completely different.
Yeah.
But those are the type of things that could come up, basically. So, yeah.
Oh, no, great advice. I think they're so difficult because, every careers advisor, teacher and parent can't know every single company in the world's application process, right? But you've just said it, they all have elements of the same, some have a bit different, and practice is all you can do. There's lots of YouTube videos, and if you go onto the early careers sites for those companies, they will most likely have top tips, and there's people like us that you can always reach out to. So just one kind of thing that I want to cover is social life. So obviously you had the option to go to Loughborough and be in that university lifestyle and be part of the societies and things. How has kind of being an apprentice been socially? Is it true that you don't really have that uni life? What have you found about that?
I think I don't know what the uni life is in that sense because all I have is conversations with friends and stuff. But I can safe to say that you have a great social life as an apprentice, at least from what I've had
Yeah,
at
for
Sky so
sure.
far. I mean, with the finance apprenticeship program, you join with another person, so right from there on, you have someone who you can like relate to study wise. You become friends with them, and then they're obviously adding new people every year. So we're good friends with the current intake, the previous intake, and obviously the person who's on the intake with me. So we've obviously made our own group of friends. The grads in the finance community are also great as well. We have quarterly socials with them. We have regular catch ups. Go just even just for a coffee or go for drinks or whatever. You can do either, and obviously in your team as well, you have socials with them. So we have quarterly socials in our team, monthly ones. We have catch ups on a regular basis. It's safe to say that your social life is pretty active and it's
Yeah.
great. So I can, I've enjoyed every aspect of it so far.
Yeah, and you get a salary at the same time, so it's a
Exactly.
win-win, right?
100%. I'm not complaining.
Cool. So thank you so much. It's been so great to hear your journey. Now, I just want to finish on one bit of advice you would give to someone who might be in a position to you. You know, they've applied to uni, they're not sure, they might be going down the apprenticeship route. What would you say to them?
I'd probably just end it on like a quote if I could, because
Yeah, go for
I
it.
find that they kind of really help me kind of get forward in anything I do, and it was actually really pivotal in helping me get Sky, and this is the reason why I spent so long preparing. It kind of goes something like this: I'd rather live with the regret of failure than the regret of not trying. And what I mean by that is that I'd rather put as much effort as I can, and if I don't get the interview, then I can just hold my head up and say I tried as hard as I can and as hard as I could, and I can live with that. But
Yeah.
if I know I could have spent an extra hour there, here or there, and I didn't pass, I'd live with that for the rest of
Yeah.
my life in that sense. And that I don't want to have that regret. I'd rather have the regret of not, of just not passing, but knowing that I tried so hard. I'd rather have that than just being lazy
Yeah,
and
yeah,
then
yeah.
not passing, not getting the offer. So
Yeah.
I'd say that in terms of what I mean, how students can apply that is that with every apprenticeship, put as much effort as you can into the application process. Research every bit of the process. Research the company. Try your hardest in the interview, and whatever happens. That point is out of your control, but a lot before that is in your control. So you just got to take advantage of that and try as hard as you can. That's what
Yeah.
I'd say. Really.
No, that's great advice. Thank you so much. And it's been, yeah, fantastic to hear about your journey and the fact you went on a gap year. You know, not many people do that. They usually go straight from school. So the fact you kind of took that year to focus is amazing. And I'd say shout out to your cousin for informing you of apprenticeships.
Yeah,
Who knows?
yeah, 100%. I don't know what I would have done without her going there, because I didn't know she was applying for it until she got the offer. So when I
Yeah,
found that
it was
out,
on the down low. So
exactly, you
no,
gotta
it's
be.
great. Thank you so much for coming.
No worries, happy to be here.
Thank you.